All right, hello, we are live. So we're just going to wait for John to show up, and until he does, I figured that I would just hops on here. Hey, John.
Hello,
How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
Awesome. Great. Great here too. Well, so thanks for joining me tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about that's something close to my heart and obviously yours, which is inviting Jesus into our emotional and mental healing and how it can just transform our lives. So, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I am a clinical therapist in Utah, and I specialize in anxiety, trauma, couples and family work, and addiction.
Awesome. And I know that whenever we were talking, you mentioned that you have kids as well. So, do you want to tell us about a bit about that?
Yeah, so I have four kids. Our youngest will turn 2 weeks old tomorrow. So
Oh,
we
that's
uh, got a wide range, 10 to 2 weeks.
awesome. How are you guys doing with the 2-week-old?
It's going really well. So we had an at-home birth, and he just seems to love it at home. Anytime we, even just venture outside, he's not as comfortable, but he's definitely like, yeah, home is my place. That's where I like to be.
Well, that's great. Glad to hear it, that everything went well. So, I wanted to talk to you about this book, Inviting Christ into Your Healing Journey. So, can you just tell us a little bit about like the motivations behind the book? Um, and then from there, we'll get into a little bit more. But yeah, what are the motivations about the book?
Yeah, so what got me to decide to write this book was sitting in church one day, and we were having a conversation about mental health, and it was really steered towards mental health is a real thing. And the conversation never seemed to get to a place of how do we actually have Christ involved in our mental health? How do we have him there so we can get through some of these different challenges and find the healing that we need? And then I just really felt after that, you know, that meeting that I could helped to write that book because I had a lot of ideas on how to bridge that gap and to find a really good sense of healing in a wide variety of different mental health challenges.
That's awesome. Yeah, so with that in mind, you're mentioning about how we don't necessarily invite Jesus into our healing for trauma and anything like that. So, how can someone start to invite Christ into their healing process if they've never done it before?
Yeah, so I think one of our best tools is prayer, first off. Because when we try to just rely on ourselves to heal, or even other professionals, we're missing out on who the master healer is. And I know, like, as I sit in the therapy office, if I'm inviting the spirit to guide me in what I'm doing, I'm going to share a lot of I guess, ask a lot of questions I might not necessarily think through myself based on my training, and it can take the conversation in a different direction that I think is a better direction because Christ knows where they're at. And if we're doing that on our own, really trying to pray and ask for, some of that spiritual guidance, that's an incredible tool that we have.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So, you would definitely suggest starting with just personal prayer, and then maybe if you are a professional, always saying a prayer before you start any sessions with clients.
Yeah, I'd say as a professional, that's something that I do whenever I have some breaks throughout my day. So before I start, I will definitely say a prayer to invite the Spirit to be with me, and then different points during the day so that I'm kind of maintaining that focus, whether or not the individual sitting with me in the room is Christian or spiritual themselves. You know, I can still have that added boost for myself, and everyone has access to that tool.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So keep that's a great segue to the next question that I have is, so if you work with people who are not necessarily Christian, what are some of the biggest like barriers that you face whenever you're trying to combine this like faith with mental health? Like what do you see there?
Well, I guess I do want to be careful in those kind of settings that I'm not trying to force any of my beliefs into that setting. Um, there are definitely different ethical boundaries that I have to really be aware of. And so, with those who are not of a Christian background, I'll I'll be praying. I'll be trying to seek that guidance. And I think there's a lot of overlap in many of the therapeutic principles that I can point to that are teaching very similar points. I just can't call them exactly the same thing. And so I know for me, like that's been a barrier in the past to say like, okay, I want to bring up this principle because I know it's really helpful and will get my client into a better place, but I can't say that thing. I found that the more study and prayer and putting all that together, like there is enough overlap. I can share the same idea with really just a different label.
Yeah, that's a great point for sure. Definitely. And on that note, I know that some of the clients that I've worked with, they definitely still are a believer, like they still believe in Jesus, but they might be feeling some disconnect from God because of the trauma or the pain that they've experienced. So what sort of advice do you have for somebody who feels disconnected from God because of the trauma that they've experienced, and how would you navigate that?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of barriers that we experience to feeling God's presence actively with us in the moment. It could be trauma, it could be depression, it could be anxiety, right? All of those create really loud voices that kind of counter this idea that God is with me right now. And I would say, like, in those moments, you can draw on the past. What has my experience been before, and recognize he has been there before, and I knew that then, so I can draw strength from that now. I think that's a really big reason why journaling or sharing experiences with other people so that they can, remind us of that can be really powerful. And so I'd recommend that. You can also, in a lot of ways, rely on some of the strength from other people that they have currently. So it's not all just, past experiences, but as you have both of those, I think that helps us turn our faith forward and know that, yeah, I can receive this healing, I can receive the strength. I just may not be able to feel it right now because there are a lot of hard things going on. Life isn't easy.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. You mentioned about sharing experiences, and that's something that I have clients do in our first session together, is because I work with women who have given birth or are about to give birth. They usually will go through and like do like a big brain dump of their birth experience, and they find that even just doing that one time, they feel like so much better. Can you maybe speak on how important it is to share your experience to somebody who's actually going to listen to it?
Yeah. So we live in a world where there's a ton of shame around. Something that says like maybe where there's something wrong with us because we're experiencing these challenges, or I don't feel valuable enough that other people are going to even respect what I'm going to say. And there might be really valid reasons they believe that, right? Plenty of people have really challenging childhood, or they might be trying to share things with other people that can't hold that space for them for whatever reason. And that reinforces this idea that I'm not valuable enough. And that's where having someone who will actually listen to you becomes really healing, because all of a sudden you have a space where you can just be you. You don't have to put up any front, and other people are going to respect that.
Mhm.
I find that to be a really healing process for a lot of my clients as well. That first session, they're sharing an awful lot. We're not getting into the depths of it, but they're like, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened,
Yeah.
and all of these things are really hard. And I was like, yeah, share it all. You don't have to feel bad that you're dumping it all on me. That's what I'm here for. I want to be that person that is not going to tell you to, be quiet. Like that's too much,
No,
right?
no, I love that. I love what you were saying about like people think that they might think I don't feel valuable enough for somebody to listen or something along those lines. And I think that that's so important to realize that obviously you are valuable enough, you are worthy enough to have these experiences heard, validated, whatever you want to say. And I think that that's so great that, again, that there are people that can hold space for them for sure. So along that line, I kind of want to dig into like Christianity a little bit. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions about mental health in Christian communities?
There's a few different things that I hear. One is that I've done something wrong that has brought this upon myself. And that's a huge one, that, you know, mental health challenges don't necessarily have a root in something we actively did to bring it about. Um, so I think that's a huge misconception. Another one I would say is, you know, depending on like different communities you might be in, that there's this like perfectionistic kind of attitude that comes about, that I have to put in all this work, where really like Christ is saying like, I'm here for you. Like I've done everything to bring you back. You don't have to do all of this yourself. You might be seeking out different, people in your life, your therapist, your different professionals, your different family, your friends to help you along. But like even that, like I think there's so much that we have to turn over to God and Jesus Christ so that we can receive that healing. And there's none of it I think we should feel like we have to do all ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And along those lines, I find that a lot of clients that I work with, they can like mentally make that connection that they didn't do anything wrong necessarily to have this thing happen to them. But then, like in their heart, it just still feels like that. So, in those situations, whenever you can, again, logically be like, yes, I know that I didn't do anything wrong necessarily, how do you help clients really see that like Jesus allowed this to happen for a reason and that they can still trust that again Christ is present in this journey?
Yeah, well, I think like that's kind of a big question there, is like, why did Christ allow this to happen? I think there's a lot of reasons. One is he's not going to take outweigh our individual choice or individual choices of other people around us, and that can have a big factor. Um, there might be just like things that happen because our bodies are not perfect, and things just fall apart on the inside, on the outside, and so so I think if we shift some of our perspective, not to that, always like Jesus Christ just chose to allow this to happen, but like also he is going to take this experience and he's going to know how to make that become something that's going to help us to grow, help us to become better in ways that we can't see for ourselves. We would never imagine putting ourselves into those situations. I don't think he's manufacturing those for us to become better, but he knows how to transform that negative experience into something really powerful and life changing for us.
Yes, 100% agree with that. And that really is the most important thing, is that, again, he's going to use these experiences for our good. Even if it feels like that's impossible, he definitely will. So, what about community? Because I know, like, where I live, we don't really necessarily have like a ton of Christian community, and I'm sure that a lot of, because I'm in the middle of nowhere basically, and I know that a lot of people also are kind of in the same boat. So what do you say, because we know community is such a huge component to healing and to just the way that God made us, is, again, we're supposed to live in community. So how do we, like, what is the role of the community in our emotional and spiritual healing, and how can we build up these supportive environments to actually help us after a trauma or even just with other mental health issues we're facing?
Yeah, I think community is essential. Like you said, one of the strongest communities I hope that we develop is with our family, because especially if we're talking our immediate family, that's who we're with all the time, or the most frequently, and that can provide a lot of our support. So even when we might live out in the middle of nowhere, if we have a good strong family unit, then we're going to be able to draw a lot of strength from that. And our next level out from that is our extended family. And I'm blessed to be part of an extended family that I married into, but it's very strongly connected, and everyone's trying to support each other. Someone sends out a message that, hey, I'm struggling with this, all of a sudden, we've got dozens of people who are interested in our well-being and are willing to help us. So family, I think, comes first in that community. Next, after that, I'd say like our current technology like helps us to connect to a lot of people in ways that we couldn't have imagined 30, 40 years ago. And these online communities we can draw strength from, as we're sharing some of those different experiences. So I can connect with someone who lives out on the East Coast, and I'm here in the Mountain West, and we can still like work to support each other. That's a wonderful thing. We don't have to be limited to the people immediately around us. I think that's a beautiful thing that technology has helped us with.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'm in Pennsylvania, you're in Utah. It's like, and we're talking easily in real time. It's so cool, for sure. I get a lot of clients who are actually from Canada, so that's always interesting because sometimes they're in like those little tiny islands out in the middle of the ocean, and it's so cool to be like, oh, I'm talking to you, and you're like so far away from me. It's pretty awesome. Um, so probably have to wrap up here in a bit, but how has your personal faith journey shaped this work that you do in mental health and counseling? And yeah.
Yeah, so I've grown up as a Christian my whole life. My family, really embraced the gospel throughout my whole life. But then I'd say like there have been different points when I ventured out on my own that I started questioning different things. And you know, I had the foundation, but wasn't really relying on that foundation that same way that I do now. And as I've grown in my faith, it's helped me to find a lot of healing in a lot of the really hard things that I experienced growing up. And I've been able to release a lot of things that I held onto for 20, 30 years. And since I've discovered that healing for myself, I want to have every sort of opportunity I can to help other people experience that. And so that's why in the last several years, my focus has shifted from being a therapist, which has always been I want to help other people, but now towards I can help people as they also develop this relationship with Christ, and that is far beyond my own abilities.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I love that what you said about not just a therapist, but also helping them develop this relationship. That's so beautiful. So I know that you have to be really careful about privacy, but can you give us a story of a past client that you've worked with that you've seen this a beautiful growth of combining faith and mental health?
Yeah, I have a lot of different experiences. So there was this one lady that came in her early 30s and just extremely depressed. She couldn't see any of her own value and was pretty suicidal at that point. And she was like, this is like my last ditch effort. And, you know, we happened to share the same faith, so we started talking about, some of her, root issues, and she just didn't feel worthy enough to be connected to God, didn't and could see how like uh, Christ's atonement, his suffering could be readily available for other people, but couldn't see it for herself. And we went on a 2-year journey where we really unpacked where these different limiting beliefs were coming from and how she could then work to change those into something that was now a strength for her. She could rely on Christ. She could turn to Him and recognize answers to prayers where before she couldn't feel that. And her transformation from, I don't think I have anything worth living for and I'm a drain on everyone, to now she's looking for all sorts of different opportunities to go and like serve other people and help out as best she can. Well, that was the point when I last talked with her a couple of years ago. She was in a much different space.
That is so beautiful. That's so cool that you said about to recognize answers to prayers, because I know personally I definitely struggle with that sometimes because it's not the answer that I think or that I thought that I would get. But it still is like such a beautiful gift and a beautiful answer. So I think what you said there was awesome. Thanks for sharing her story. So
You're welcome.
just wrapping up, what is one key takeaway that you hope people walk away from after reading your book or hearing this message today?
I would say that the most important message I can think of is that Christ wants you as his own, and as you turn to him and cast all your burdens on him, that he will receive all of that, and he will lift you up in ways that are going to be incredible. And sometimes we just have to be patient in that process and let him do what he can do.
Oh, but that's so hard being patient. At least it is for me. But I
Oh,
I
I
do
know
think that that's hard
it.
to let him do what he can do if we can be patient. That's awesome. So, if people want to read this book or talk to you more, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's johnnashcmhc.com. There's a lot of ways to connect with me. You can find my book on there. You can find my book on Amazon. In a couple of weeks, it will be more widely available outside of Amazon. All of those links can be found on my website.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you missed it at the beginning, his book is Inviting Christ on Our Healing Journey, and it's a therapist's perspective on incorporating spirituality with mental health. So thanks for talking to me, John. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and I hope that you guys are getting some sleep and enjoying lots of newborn snuggles and all that.
As much as we can.
All right, well, if anybody needs anything, any of the links, I will try to put them in the comments after. But again, I hope you have a wonderful, I guess it's afternoon for you. But whenever you're watching this, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, John.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.